Welcome back to Briggs on Books, our international talk show where we talk to authors from all over the world about their books and their process and how they got from the beginning to the end and what happens after you finish writing. You got to get the book published somehow. So we like to have a lot of authors on who tell us just that. How did you do it? And our next guest has done it a couple of times, Tim Scott, a novelist. Welcome, Tim.
Hi, how are you, Mike?
Excellent. Before we go too far, I'm going to just pop some of your covers up here on the screen. Driving Toward Destiny is one. Hang on, Tim. We're having some technical issues. It's 103 degrees where we are today. And the computer equipment, everything's acting up a little bit. But it's working fine. And there's Destiny Uncharted. Tell our viewers, Tim, where are you located?
I'm in Jacksonville, Florida, and it isn't too much cooler than it is where you are.
Yeah, but it gets humid out there, does it?
Yeah, a bit, yeah.
The people in California have no idea what humidity is until you visit Florida. I am going to ask you about your books, and I want you to tell us some things about them, including some awards they've been considered for. But tell us, let's start with Driving Toward Destiny. It's about a period of time that I love to read about. Tell us about the book and the period and what goes on.
Okay, well, 1971, I graduated from college and was subject to the draft. The draft was a major issue for many young men getting out of college at the time, and I didn't know what to do with myself, and I had my parents banging on me to get a job and stuff, and I didn't think that was appropriate given that I could be whisked off to Vietnam and sent back in a body bag. So I rebelled, and I went over to live in Europe, in Berlin, with a friend of mine who happened to be living in a commune at the time. And we spent 4 months there in the early winter, actually, of 1972. And he was a biker, and he talked me into buying a motorcycle. And then he left, and I went to. I didn't want to stick around Berlin. This is all part of the story, so that's what I'm telling you. So I drove the motorcycle from Berlin all the way down to Athens and across to the South Shore of Crete, and there were reasons for that. And a lot of this is autobiographical, but it turns fictional in certain aspects of it too. So that's the thrust of the story: a motorcycle trip from Berlin to the South Shore of Crete, and all the people that I met and the adventures and whatnot. And it's pretty cool. I won 3 finalist awards in book contests, for indie book contests for it in 2023, and so it was successful, I guess, from the standpoint I self-published. As I told you earlier, it's pretty hard to get these things marketed, so I can't say I made a lot of money at it, but it was an adventure in and of itself, and it was great to write the story. It wasn't a matter of catharsis. It was a matter of having fun writing a story that I enjoyed the time doing.
Yeah.
So after I'd finished that, and I needed a new project, I had in my mind, hey, I can extend this story. And I did. I wrote a second book, Destiny Uncharted, which is totally fictional. But I found that by writing the first book, I'd learned a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to teach myself what a novel was made of in terms of when you write it. I mean, I have a master's in English, so I know how to read a book. But when it comes down to writing it, that's a different story altogether. You've got to satisfy the reader, and you have to know how to do that, and you have to meet the reader's expectations when you're writing the book, because he's reading the book, and if you don't hit kind of milestones he wants, he's going to put the book down, and that's going to be the end of that. So you want to know what you're doing.
How long did it take you to come up with and write the first book compared to the second book?
Well, the first book I was learning on the go, so it was a matter of learning and writing and learning and writing. It was about 2 years.
Wow.
the first year was I studied how to write the book. And then it was a long book, much longer probably than it should have been. But, I got it down. The second book was a completely different experience because I learned that there was too much in the first book. I learned how to make it more crisp, it clicked. And the dialogue was much more, I'll say apropos, it was on point. And so it only took me maybe 8 months to write that book. And it's much shorter, but it has more characters, and it has a larger appeal. There are more women in it. A woman friend of mine who's read the book said, "Oh, you write women very well."
Nice.
That's nice to hear. And so, that was a really cool thing. So I'm waiting to hear, like I said, what the results of some of the contests I've applied for on that book are. And I got a 5-star review from Readers' Favorites.
Oh, that's great.
Which is the largest contest I applied for. I've already got a 5-star review there. So I have hopes.
Yeah. I'm one who I read and read and read, and I spend a lot of time trying to decide what my next book is. And that's why when I see these little awards and notices that a book will get, it sure helps me make the decision a little easier.
Exactly, yeah. What I'm thinking of doing is, because the first book was too long and it didn't sell. I mean, it was, for reasons, I don't know, it just wasn't, I didn't know how to promote it or anything. I'm thinking of, and actually I'm working on tearing it down and turning it into 3 books and making that into a series and adding the 4th book as a 4th book in a series and remarketing it and getting an agent, hopefully, to sell the series to a publisher. Agents don't like to work with books that are already published, but if you can demonstrate that you have really reworked the material and made it into a marketable product, I think I might be able to do that. I've already removed at least 20,000 words from the first book, and cutting it into 3 books makes, and each one has a beginning and a satisfying ending. So, and publishers apparently like series. And if they take it, that also gives me more credibility with them. It gives me a larger platform to be able to work off from their standpoint.
Yeah, I love to read a series too. So sometimes at the end of the book, you're not ready to let go of the characters, and
exactly.
That's why I love a series to come back. Well, I'm going to get that first book. First of all, I love to read about that era, Vietnam and uncertainty and not knowing, what's going to happen to you, and adventures people that age go through. And I want to read it, and then I hope you rewrite it, and then I'll get to read it again in more of a expanded version.
It has, that was my period from the standpoint of growing up into larger life is concerned, but I tried to make it as universal as possible. It's there's Siddhartha is one of the books that we all read back then, but that has a universal appeal. Hess won the Nobel. Siddhartha is a great book, and there are some other books I've mentioned in there that have that same appeal.
Let's go to this second. Tell us a little bit about the other book, Destiny
Uncharted.
Uncharted, okay.
Right. Well, that, like I said, is an extension of the first book. I didn't, the first book I left off, it's sort of hanging, and I left it that way on purpose because I heard from someone on the Authors Learning Center that if you're going to write a book, don't close it out completely, because you might want to have an extension somewhere along the line. And that's what I did. And so the second book picks up very naturally from where the first book leaves off. And it allowed me, because it's really fictional, it allowed me to bring in some stuff that I knew actually was happening in reality that I'd been thinking about for a long time, and so I made that as part of the plot, and have the guy who had grown up in the first book up to a point, all of a sudden hit this reality that the second book presents him with, and he has to deal with that because he didn't stop growing up. He found out he didn't stop growing up necessarily at the end of the first book. So the second book sort of caps that off in a different way. So
well, tell me about the real life story. How did you land with the war and the draft and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, okay. I was over there, and I was in Crete, and I came back from Crete. I won't give away the whole plot of the book, but as I came back from Crete, I was in France, and I figured I better check in with my parents. I'd been over there about close to 6 months, 6 months. And it was cheaper living in Europe at the time than it was in the United States. Let me tell you, it was quite a bit cheaper. And so, and of course, I was staying in youth hostels, and I wasn't exactly living high. But I called them up from an American Express office, I believe, in Nice or something. And I learned that I had not been drafted. My draft number was not called.
Wow.
And it had been called the year before.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so that was the sweat, Oh, man. And that was a major relief. So then I sold the bike and came home.
Came home. Okay.
Picked up my life again.
But had there not been the draft and the war, you probably would not have gone on that adventure?
Oh, no, I don't. No. Why? Why should I?
Yeah.
I mean, I would have followed what my parents had me do, and that's one of the main themes in the book. Is, look, you gotta follow your own path. You can't just do what somebody else tells you to do.
Yeah.
That's a main theme in the book.
Great. That's a great story. Now, Tim, where can people buy these books?
Get them on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Amazon, Driving Towards Destiny. Just go to books, Driving Towards Destiny.
Yeah.
There it is.
All right. I would like to hear more of your stories. I'm sure you got a lot more in you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. And for our viewers, don't go anywhere because we've got more authors coming up right after this.